Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, much as we're still taking a look at preparations for the elections, but from another perspective now, Mr. John Oloyede joins us today. He's a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Good morning.
Well, other than the card reader, we may also come to it in the course of the discussion today, but let's talk about this verdict which was handed down by the court saying, INEC, register YDP. And many are asking, wait a minute, okay, if they get them registered, what's the implication of that? I mean, is there any chance that this may affect the already rescheduled election dates?
I think the issue of the court decision on YDP is actually a more serious matter than the use of PVC, TVC, or card reader. And curiously, parties are not talking about this. INEC seems to be silent. I think the last I heard INEC say was, we haven't seen some court papers. I mean, it's in the public domain that the court has handed down a decision. Whatever level the court is on in the judicial hierarchy, it's a landmine. It can affect either the holding of the election on the particular day, because we all know that INEC, I mean, according to what we have read, they are printing ballot papers abroad for security reasons. And now, most of these ballot papers, according to JEGA, they are already in. The name of a party, as has been ordered by court, is not on that ballot paper. Now, there are precedents. When such a thing happens, you know that ultimately it's not just that it may affect the date that is already been scheduled, because if INEC has to print, we have just 2 weeks. And for the past 2 years, the ballot papers that are to be used, they've been printing, and yet all the ballot papers are not in 2 years after. Now we are talking of an election that's about 2 weeks away. If they have to put the name of this party on the ballot, it means the elections may have to be shifted for another 1 or 2 years. Now, that is a part. The second likely effect is, assuming that INEC decides to shut its eyes to the obvious and say, well, we are not going to obey the court order, which is going to be a very terrible precedent.
What was the court order? The court order said you should register the party.
Yes, and that the party must be allowed to participate in the election.
The court ruled...
There was a further order, as I read, that the party, apart from registering, of course, what is the effect of registration? The effect of registration is that the party has a right, like any other party, to field candidates. So even if the court makes the order, the consequential effect, even without the consequential order, but the court made the order, as I read, that the party must be allowed to participate.
And then I also understand the party then says that they will hold their party primaries.
Yes.
They will come up with candidates. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, on the 26th, or is it 25th that they spoke of, how can they submit names of candidates at that date?
Now, yes, that is not an impossibility. If they were not registered previously, it's not possible for them to have held their primaries. Now, it's after recognition that gives them the legal capacity to conduct primaries. So they are just acting.
So outside of the stipulated time, the Electoral Act, the laws, because the court has just given
that has been rubbished.
Wow.
There's a court order. The effect of that court order is to say, okay, you revert back to the status quo ante. There's a party that you left out. It's just like sprinters, 100-meter race, and somebody beats the gun. I mean, everybody would have to come back and start all over again.
Assuming the person is not disqualified.
Well, if not disqualified, yes, the person may be disqualified. But so now what we have on ground, yes, they have a right to conduct primaries because that is in consonance with the Electoral Act as amended.
So if that were the case, and then they hold their primaries, and submit names of, say, we don't know if they'll come up with names of presidential candidates because they're saying they will,
yes,
on the 26th,
yes.
How can elections on the 28th?
I don't know. You know, Nigeria is a land of miracles.
Okay.
Things happen. But if INEC disregards the order of court, it does so not just at its own peril, but at the peril of the Nigerian state. Because it's like a landmine. Whatever happens, I mean, let's take, for instance, the Rotimi Amechi case in Rivers State. He was not, he was not fielded. The party did not put his name forward. The elections went on. They fielded another candidate, and the Supreme Court ultimately overturned the election because the Supreme Court said, look, you should have put this person there, not this other person.
Yeah, but that is a different case in the sense that the party
Yes.
is what is on the ballot paper, not the name of the candidate.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, if it was another party that had won that election, their candidates would have taken it. And there would be no talk of whether or not Rotimi Amechi participated or was a primary candidate of that particular party.
What I agree with you to a large extent, but that's looking at it from the micro level. Now, macro, it's even worse for INEC as the umpire to have left out the name of a party. Everything is the fault of INEC.
Dr. Lady,
I'm not a doctor.
Sorry, Mr. Lady, can we really say,
Yes.
Can any party that is truly patriotic say that, after we've been registered now, they would actually hold these elections ransom and say, because our names are not on the ballot paper, these elections must not hold?
Now,
can any political party really say that?
Now, it depends on your own definition of patriotism. Patriotism to them may be, look, I want to perform my legal obligations to the country. We have the best candidates. And if we don't participate in these elections...
how feasible is that?
No, it's not feasible.
What I'm saying is, let's apply a bit of common sense.
Yes.
How feasible is that? We're talking about 3 weeks to the election.
Yes.
We know how long political parties have been campaigning before these elections. Now, a party that's just about to be registered, or maybe that's just been registered, is saying, well, we have every chance of winning in the elections.
Yes. Unfortunately, we are not talking common sense. We are talking common law.
It's something we must consider, because if we're talking about how much money has been earmarked, this is you also talking about INEC printing ballot papers, and how it's taking so long, and how they don't print them in the country, and how logistics is a nightmare, and all of this. How feasible is it that we will throw all that money away and say it doesn't matter, and we'll waste that money because we want to include a party that just joined the race 3 weeks to the elections?
Malkwe, you see, I share your sentiments. But unfortunately, I'm a lawyer. Every order of court, until set aside, is valid. And it must be obeyed.
I'm reading that order of court. I'm not seeing anywhere that it says, just a moment, Sulaiman. I'm not seeing anywhere it says include them in the ballot paper. All I'm saying, and I've seen, because we also reported that story, we reported it saying that INEC was asked to register that party. I've also gone through all the media here. What I'm saying is, register the political party. There's no way it says put them on the ballot paper.
Well, I don't, that's in the realm of speculation. I read it somewhere that they must be allowed until you see the court order per se. In Nigeria, you hear that there's an order of injunction. The next day, you hear that, no, I never made such an order. So the best document is the order from court with the stamp of court. But even leaving it at that, I have said earlier on that where a court makes an order that you must register a particular party that you did not register, the implication is that you ought to have registered them. For whatever reasons, you did not, but you are wrong. Now, if they are wrong, what consequence you follow? You don't just register me for the sake of having me on your records. You register a party because the party wants to participate in elections. I am not saying, oh, it is patriotic, it is right, it is feasible for them to insist that they must participate in this election. I'm not saying so. What I'm saying is that INEC, as an independent umpire, is not in a position to start rationalizing or analyzing an order of court. The position is, if they appeal against it, they can appeal and say, look, stay execution of that order, and the elections will go on. But God help Nigeria and Nigerians if after the elections and before May 29th, the appellate court affirms the position of the lower court, because it goes back to the election.
So,
and it will be set aside.
What is the best thing to do for INEC?
Honestly, it's so complicated now. If I tell you I know what INEC, INEC, they have big lawyers, senior advocates, they have lawyers in-house. I think I met the director legal in Abuja last Monday, and a wonderful gentleman. I think I don't want to speculate. I don't know what they should do. It's a very, but all I can say is, as a lawyer, and knowing where I feed from, the order of court ought to be obeyed.
Yeah,
because we haven't actually seen the entire judgment.
Yes.
If what Marco is telling us
yes.
Really doesn't have that clause that they be put in the ballot, can they slide?
Oh, yes.
Recognition, registration, no participation in the election, can it go?
It's always arguable. If it's not there, it can be argued by any lawyer before any panel that, well, you cannot impute into an order of court what is not there. That's one. Two, we haven't also seen the prayers, the claims, the exact claims of the party before the court. I doubt whether a party will go to court and just fight and say, you must register me, and will not ask for consequential orders to follow. When we see the papers, because usually the order, I mean, when except the court, if the court had said the claim succeeds in part, it probably will, oh, register, don't do that. But if the prayers include a specific prayer that INEC should not have left us out of this election, I mean, by necessary implication, the court will probably have made an order allowing the claims. And if that were so, but if it is not there and the court has not made the order, you know, legal semantics, lawyers will go to court and argue things. A lawyer can argue that, well, the court deliberately left that out because the court was mindful of the catastrophic effect of including that kind of prayer at this 11th hour.
Because I've heard the members of that YDP say, look, we will hold our primaries. And what alarmed them was the date.
Of the 26th.
And I thought, is this real? But the thing about this, let me hypothesize now.
Yeah.
If the case is maybe INEC appeals this matter, and then the matter is being heard, or they also get a stay of execution, the elections will go on.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, does it mean that whatever the judgment or the court gives, hands down as a judgment, can they undo this election if it holds while the appeal goes on?
Yes, they can. And that's why some persons are already speculating that this landmine, is it not still following the script of a particular group of people who are planning to, bring about an interim kind of government? I don't belong to any group. But if, for instance, they go ahead with the elections and the appellate court, where they probably, assuming they get the order of stay, still agrees with the lower court's decision that, oh, this party ought to have been there and ought to have participated, the implication will be, okay, everything conducted, everything done, you cannot put something on nothing. Everything must fall, right? And then that will create a serious constitutional problem for this country. So
do you think, then, that the courts would go that extra mile? Because if we're talking about, oh, we want to follow a court ruling because of the Electoral Act, and then we now put the entire Constitution in jeopardy, because one of the things that lawyers have said is that there is no space, there's even no mention of interim government at all in the Constitution.
No, there is no such thing. The court will not make an order for interim. But then...
Will the court make an order in isolation? That's the thing.
The court will...
Do courts make orders in isolation, in a vacuum, pretending that they do not know the circumstances?
What is going on?
Exactly. Do courts do that?
No, the court's orders are based on what is before it. The judges read newspapers. They watch channels. They watch NTA and AIT. But when the judges want to decide, that's why the judges are not influenced by public opinion per se. Now, the court will then look at the documents before. Unfortunately, the appeal will be decided on documents that came from the court below. Nothing can be added. So when the courts are considering, what to do, the court will only determine the action, the appeal, based on what's before it. And if what is before the court, if set aside what the lower court said, set aside the judgment, which is put the YDP and let them participate, assuming. if that's what is before the court, all the court will say is, oh, we affirm the decision of the lower court. Yes, you must put them, they must participate. Or we disagree with the decision of the lower court for so reasons, and then that judgment is set aside. The court will not go on rationalizing about, oh, I mean, well, you see, if we say this now, this will happen. If those prayers are not before the court does not concern itself with that. Well, unfortunately.
I think there might be a new phrase, legal mathematicians might just have popped up doing some things behind the scene about these elections, but don't you just love this country? Well, thank you, Mr. John Oloide, for coming on today. Mr. Oloide is a legal practitioner. We'll be back after the break. Join us again.